Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel. It seems like we're dealing with a new crisis every week, and when that happens, it's hard not to ask ourselves, what's next? But when we do that, it's really easy to let our imaginations run wild and get overwhelmed. It's a much better idea to take a look at the threats that are most likely to affect us, and today we're going to do that. We're going to break down the top threats that we should all be paying attention to based on what's going on in the world. And as we go over them, I'm going to show you simple steps that you can take to prepare for each one to help you and your loved ones stay safe. First up, we have probably the most obvious one, and that's political and social unrest. Now, I'm not saying that the entire country is going to devolve into chaos overnight, but if you look at history, periods of high political tension, especially around elections, court decisions, or other major events, are when tempers flare up and people lash out. And that could mean different things for normal folks like us. First, there could be protests and riots, and what those look like can vary widely depending on where you live. Like one city or town could have just peaceful marches, while another could see looting or property damage. So, know your area, the people who live in it, and also keep tabs on what's going on locally. Like I use a mix of social media groups and also websites like nextdoor.com to help me keep up with what's going on. But if protests and riots get bad enough, they could affect a lot of different things. For example, they could cause travel disruptions that could make it a lot harder to get to work, pick up our kids, or go to the grocery store. And those same disruptions could also make it harder for trucks to deliver supplies to stores, which could cause shortages. And that's one reason why it's so important to keep plenty of food, water, medications, and other basics at your home, because you don't want to run out of something at the exact moment that your town is totally falling apart. Then if violence is an issue, cities may impose curfews or shelter-in-place orders. Those are things that you want to make plans for now rather than just trying to figure it out as you go along. Make sure that everybody knows where to go and what to do if you're separated or you can't use your phone. Also keep in mind that crime will increase during periods of tension and unrest, and it won't be just looting. Other things like burglaries, car thefts, and scams will increase also, so now's a good time to take a look at your home security. Make sure that you have high quality deadbolts on your doors and long screws to keep all of your hardware in place. Also make sure that your security lights and cameras are working like they should. If you have a garage door, keep it closed and have an exterior door with good hardware between it and the rest of your home. Then keep valuables out of sight, vehicles locked, and don't advertise what you have, either in person or online. But when things get tense, your best move is to stay calm and keep a low profile. Don't go out looking for trouble or trying to be a hero. Focus on keeping your family safe, writing things out at home, and be ready to leave if it comes to that. But one thing that we'll definitely face in the next 6 months is natural disasters and extreme weather. While we don't know exactly when or where they'll happen, we do know that they're going to happen to somebody somewhere. From hurricanes along the coast to tornadoes in the south and wildfires out west, nature's been reminding us of who's really in charge, and it doesn't matter if you live in a city or out in the middle of nowhere. Almost every location is vulnerable to at least one type of weather event. We're seeing more billion-dollar disasters than ever before, and even areas that used to be safe are learning that wildfires, floods, or even ice storms can show up where you least expect them. So don't assume that something won't happen where you live just because it hasn't happened in the past 50 years. But that being said, start by focusing on the disasters that you're most likely to face. Like where I live in eastern Texas, it's tornadoes, severe thunderstorms, and wildfires. If you've just moved somewhere and you aren't familiar with the area, then check NOAA's website or your local emergency management office for that information. But if you know what's most likely to hit where you live, it'll just help you be more efficient with your preps. But one item that we can all use, regardless of the disaster that we're dealing with, is a high quality water filter. My family and I have been using the Cove Pure reverse osmosis system for most of this year to help keep our drinking water clean, and I'd like to thank them for sponsoring us today. Even during normal times, having access to clean drinking water can be a big challenge. None of the water systems around where I live are what I would call good. They all taste weird, and some have even come under scrutiny for having higher than normal levels of certain contaminants. The Cove Pure takes care of that, though. It gets rid of our tap water's funky taste, and more importantly, it's lab certified to remove up to 99.9% of contaminants from your water. That includes things like PFAs, pharmaceuticals, fluoride, lead, arsenic. It's the purest water that you can get. Then it's also convenient to use. It'll let you choose between hot and cold water and keeps plenty of water ready in a pitcher on the side of the machine. And if you have a backup power source, you can even use it when the grid goes down. If you don't already have a Cove Pure, now's a great time to pick one up because they're giving my viewers a special early holiday sale of $250 off if you go to covepure.com/DIY prepper or click the link in the description below. Then every prepper should have, at a bare minimum, a 72-hour emergency kit. I, of course, recommend shooting for a lot longer than that, but if you can't do anything else, then having enough supplies for 3 days is a whole lot better than nothing. You'll want to have enough water for every person in your family to have at least 1 gallon per day, along with shelf-stable foods y'all will actually eat. Also have basic medications and first aid supplies, including any prescriptions that you or your loved ones may need. Then be sure to have other emergency basics like flashlights, headlamps, and radios, along with plenty of batteries to keep them running for at least a few days. Sanitation supplies are also good to have, along with copies of important documents sealed inside of a waterproof bag. If you haven't invested in a backup power source, now's a good time to do that too, since a lot of the big companies are running different Black Friday sales. But aside from just buying stuff, you also want to have an evacuation plan. Know where you're going, but also know when you're going to leave. Go ahead and figure out red lines now that'll determine whether you stay or go, because making those decisions now before you're overloaded and stressed can be very helpful. It's also a good idea to practice loading up everything that you plan on taking with you so that you'll know ahead of time what works, what doesn't, and what you're going to have to leave behind. Then the next threat we could face in the next 6 months is ongoing inflation and the potential for an economic crisis. All of us have been experiencing inflation firsthand for the past several years. Each time we go to the grocery store or have to pay our utility bills, we're reminded that things just aren't the way that they used to be. Prices keep going up, paychecks aren't stretching as far as they used to, and it seems like every week that there's a new headline about huge layoffs. Even folks who have always been steady savers are feeling squeezed, and household credit card debt has reached some really scary levels across the country. The bottom line is that inflation and economic instability are real, they're hitting regular people, and they're probably going to get worse before they get better. And while we can't control the stock market, we can control at least some things within our own families. First off, if you haven't started building an emergency fund, do that now. I know that saving is really tough when prices are the way they are, but even stashing away a little bit at a time can add up. Shoot for at least a month's worth of basic expenses to start and work your way up from there. Because if something goes sideways, like your job gets cut, hours drop, or there's a surprise bill, you'll be glad that you had at least something set aside. Keep it somewhere where you can access it quickly if you need to, but not so easy that you cannibalize it on daily expenses. Then be smart about how you stock up on essentials. Like, while having a dozen buckets of freeze-dried food's really nice, you'll go a lot further for less money if you store foods that you eat regularly. Those can include beans, rice, pasta, canned goods, peanut butter, flour, salt, and sugar. Just pay attention to your weekly sales ads and take advantage of those each time that you go to the store. Also, be sure to rotate your food so that it doesn't have a chance to go bad. And y'all, storing food is a very basic thing, but it's easy to get wrong. That's why I came up with my food storage mistakes checklist. It's free for anybody who signs up for my newsletter, and you can do that using the link in the description below. But storing food is good for more than just emergency preparedness. Buying it now is good insurance against price spikes and shortages later on, and the same is true for non-food essentials like toilet paper, cleaning supplies, and also medications. But after that, also do what you can to eliminate unnecessary expenses. Take a look at your subscriptions, recurring charges, and other things that you may or may not use. Cancel what you can, find cheaper alternatives for the things you still need, and put the money that you saved either towards your emergency fund or for your food reserves. One thing that my family's working on now is eating out less. We've let that get way out of hand and we're trying to rein it back in. But one thing that a lot of people don't do that can be very helpful is just developing a side hustle. And there's a lot of different ways that you could do that. Like you could do handyman work on the weekends, or if you have a background in music, you could do some freelance gigs. Like, take my wife, for example. She does contract work at schools as her main job, and then she does photography on the side. And the goal of this doesn't have to be to replace your day job. Even just having a little extra cash can be helpful if something happens. Then also don't forget about developing skills. If you know how to do things like basic home repairs, gardening, and car maintenance, you'll be able to take care of a lot more things yourself and be less reliant on people that you'd have to pay to do the same stuff. After that, keep an eye on your accounts. Monitor your checking and savings, retirement, and credit cards to make sure that nothing fishy is going on. Identity theft and scams tend to spike when the economy's rough, so don't click on weird links or give out information over the phone. Then keep some cash at home in case ATMs go down or there's an issue with your bank. Next up, we have one of the scariest potential threats, and that's the possibility of a global conflict. Between the situation in Ukraine, never-ending problems in the Middle East, China and Taiwan, and new developments in South America, there's tension in almost every corner of the world. Now, I'm not saying that World War III is going to start tomorrow or anything like that, but with the world being as interconnected as it is, issues in one part of the world can make life a lot harder everywhere else. That can include spiking energy prices, supply chain disruptions, cyber attacks, or even just the anxiety that comes from wondering how much worse things are going to get. And because of all that, I think it's a good idea to take a realistic look at how all of this mess could affect us and what we could do about it. First up, major conflicts can have big impacts on vital resources. Those can include food, oil, gas, and other items that we use every day. Sanctions, blockades, and even panic buying can cause prices to go up or make certain items harder to find. Fortunately, though, how you deal with all that is pretty much the same as anything else. First, stockpile basic essentials like food, medicine, and other household supplies. Also, do your best to keep your gas tank at least half full, and if you hear of anything that could cause prices to increase, like sanctions or blockades, go ahead and fill up your car and top off any gas cans that you have at home. Also, don't forget about any oddball imports that you may need, like specialty batteries or spare parts for generators or other equipment, like tires for your car. Then another thing that people tend to worry about when it comes to a major global conflict is the potential for a nuclear exchange. Even though tensions are higher than they've been since the end of the Cold War, the chances of a full-on nuclear war are still pretty small. But if one were to happen and you're not right in the middle of a potential target area, it would be a good idea to know where to take shelter. Like if you have a basement, that would be the best option, but even staying in an interior room would be a lot better than hanging out next to a window. Also keep plastic sheeting and duct tape stored away so that you can seal up around doors and windows and cover up air vents. Given a lot of this stuff wouldn't help protect you from like a big fireball or huge pressure wave, but it could make a really big difference if fallout passes over where you live. If you're really concerned about all that, you can always pick up gas masks, filters, and potassium iodide tablets. You could use a Geiger counter to determine if there's radiation nearby and whether or not it's safe to go outside. Or if all this mess never happens, you could just use a Geiger counter the next time that you want to go to Walmart and buy shrimp. But one threat that's been increasing lately and will probably continue to do so over the next 6 months is cyber threats. These can affect the power grid, other utilities, large corporations, and even us as individuals. But there are things that we can do to insulate ourselves at least a little bit from them. On a personal level, use strong passwords and two-factor authentication on anything that offers it. Also be careful where you buy things online and shred any trash that has important information on it, especially if it has to do with anything financial like account numbers. Then when it comes to potential attacks on utilities, have a well thought out lights out kit that's like flashlights, LED lanterns, and also a way to keep those powered up. Even a small solar setup will work fine for that. For water, be sure to have at least a few weeks worth of it, preferably more. You want to have enough set aside for you and your family to use for drinking, cooking, and cleaning. Also have something like a water bob or aquapod that you can use to store more water if you think things could start to go sideways, because having an additional 40 or 50 gallons on hand could make a huge difference if a situation lasts longer water than what you're expecting. Then have multiple ways to purify water. That can include filters, chemical treatment methods, or even something as simple as a rocket stove and a big honking metal pot. Also have backup communication methods. A hand crank emergency radio with a built-in solar panel will help you stay informed without being a drain on your backup power systems, while ham or GMRS radios will let you gather information and also communicate with other people nearby. Just be sure to get the proper license if you plan on using them to transmit. Then cash would be extremely useful if banks go offline. While a lot of stores would just shut down if their electronic payment systems went down, it may just be your specific bank that's having issues, and if that's the case, having some physical money set aside would let you make purchases while they're getting all that mess worked out. Then the last potential threat that we'll cover today is health crises and future pandemics. Even though we had the Rona a few years back, there's still plenty of other bugs that could cause problems. Probably the biggest one right now, though, is bird flu. It's been sweeping through flocks and affecting livestock, but fortunately, it hasn't resulted in widespread human illnesses. So far, it's mainly been limited to people who've had close contact with infected birds, but if it were to mutate and start spreading more easily between people, it would probably be a lot worse than anything that we've experienced in the modern age. Then there are also smaller threats that have been affecting more localized areas, like measles got a lot of attention earlier this year, and other things like West Nile have increased as well. But there are some basic things that all of us can do to be more prepared for those types of things. First, pay attention to what's going on around you. If an area is starting to see increases of certain illnesses, stay away from them if you can, because there's no reason to go into a hot zone if you can avoid it. Then, like with other potential threats, keep a good stockpile of medications and first aid items on hand. While some conditions will require you to get out and go get medical help, many common illnesses usually don't, and the last thing that you want to do is to expose yourself to something worse by going to the pharmacy to pick up medicine for something like a common cold. Also, exercise good sanitation and hygiene. Keeping your area clean can help prevent unnecessary illnesses, and doing simple things like washing your hands after going to the store or using a gas pump can really reduce the chances of you catching something. Then if someone in your family does get sick, have what you would need to take care of them without exposing yourself. Gloves and high quality respirators like P100s can really help with that. But with winter coming up, it's almost a guarantee that some of us are going to have to deal with power outages or other emergencies. So if you want to see what every prepper should do before December 1st, then click here. Or if you want to see the first $1,000 that a new prepper should spend, then click here. Once again, I'd like to thank Cove Pure for sponsoring us today. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.